All right, you tuned in live. We back for another night edition. It's the boy Blackbeard Mirage. Time to go into some more occult history, some more American Aboriginal history. All right. I can see that these past few tapes I've been dropping have been, opening the minds and opening up the eyes of a lot of people. So I'm very, very glad to see that. I can see y'all are very, very live and active in the comment section. I appreciate it. Also, this too, I want you all to think, real long and hard before you leave certain comments. We want to think real hard and long before we leave certain comments, because see, I think long and hard before I make these tapes, so I can make sure I don't, put anything out to confuse you or, etc. Now, although I am a human and you still do have the possibilities of human error, but, at the same time, we want to be logical about the things we putting out here for people to read and come across. So, let's be careful about that, because as I said in previous tapes, I can tell in the comment section by what you wrote if you really watched the whole tape or not, and judging by, what I've been seeing the last few days, people haven't been looking at the whole videos. They probably been looking at the title or looked at a few minutes of it and just heard something they didn't want and went straight for the comment section. So, let's try not to do that, because it makes you look very, very ignorant and unintelligent. I can tell that my viewers here in the Midnight Mirage are some very, very astute people, and some very, very, scholarly type people, so very, very educated people. So, my subscribers and my viewers, you can't really trick these people. You know what I'm saying? So let's be easy on that. Let's be real easy on that. So today we're gonna go deeper into the brother C.M. Bay's work, but today we're dealing with Volume 2, The Clock of Destiny, Volume 2 by C.M. Bay, and we're gonna just go over some history, basically, just go over some details, and as usual, we will analyze. So just keep up with me. But C.M. Bay, Clock of Destiny, Volume 2, we're going into his work, basically continuing the true history of Aboriginal American people, or Aboriginal Moors, okay, of North, Central, and South America. That's the history we're dealing with, all right? So let's go into it. The evil act of the Moors and the Amazon Franciscans of South America, contrary to the Zodiac, automatically converted the entire world, the minds of humanity, in what is termed a living hell during the past 40 years. So the first thing we need to remember is that the Moors, the Aboriginal Moors of America, and the Amazon Franciscans, or the white people, as you'll see in a minute, are both responsible for creating a living hell on earth for the past 40 years, all right? Let's continue. The fathers of civilization and offsprings. The dark-skinned, kinky-haired, thick-lipped Moabite nation are the fathers of civilization, North, Central, and South America. If you are used to the Old Testament stories in Genesis, after the flood, you had Noah and his offspring populate the planet. So these Moabite people, or these Aboriginal people, this is who we are talking about, the post-deluge people, or the people post-Atlantis, post-Lemuria, all right? The dark-skinned, kinky-haired Moorish nation are the direct descendants of the Moabite nation. The term Moor means navigator of the seven seas, guided by the North Gate Pole Star. The Moorish nation prior to the Revolution and the Union of 1863 in North America is referred to as Spanish. So we have right here, we're going into the word Moor a little bit more. So it's telling us right here that the word Moor means navigator of the seven seas, okay? Navigator of the seven seas. Because if you look in a lot of dictionaries, the word Moor is going to always be associated with land and water, okay? The word Moor is always going to be associated with land and water. So the word Moor and the word Aboriginal in the word earth means the same thing, okay? Anybody that you are calling an Aborigine is basically a person who was born from the earth itself, okay? So that's what the word Moor means. The word Moor means someone of the land, and it also means a navigator of the seven seas, okay? Then it says here that the Moorish nation prior to the Revolution, that's the American Revolution of 1774 through 1776, 1779, and the Union of 1863, which is the Civil War in North America, was referred to as the Spanish. So you remember how I said on a prior tape that a lot of the Moorish Spain that they have you thinking in history took place somewhere over across the Atlantic around the Mediterranean. Now, although there may have been satellite kingdoms over there, but what if the old empire, or the mass, or the more totalitarian aspect of the Spanish, or what we call it the Spanish Empire, what if that was actually located here in the Americas, in particular Central and South America, okay? So the Spanish language, or what we call Latin, this is a Moorish language, okay? So we don't want to confuse that, all right? Let's keep going. The ruddy or red-skinned white Amazon Franciscan nations are the experimentation descendants of the Moorish nation. E pluribus unum is Latin meaning one out of many nations, caste, color, and subnations. The great seal on the $1 bill is that of the Moorish nation. So that great seal that you all have on the back of your $1 bills, that pyramid with that eye in it, that is the great seal of the Moorish nation. So that is what your ancestors left behind as their great seal. The Latin term e pluribus unum means one of many races, caste, color, or subnations. Okay, the ruddy or red-skinned white Amazon Franciscan nations are the experimentation descendants of the Moorish nation. Once again, give you the Yaqub history. So that is what we need to be thinking about when we look at the origins of these Caucasian people. Yes, we do call them Caucasian, but we don't want to necessarily think maybe the Caucasian mountains or the Caucasus Mountains in Europa. What if we really are talking about the Andes and the different mountainous regions of the Amazon, the different mountainous regions of Central America, okay? So that is another history that has just been cracked open, that these Yaqub experiments were actually taking place in the Americas, all right? Let's continue. The term Franciscan means free man or Frenchman, or freedom and liberty. Franchise, which automatically made North, Central, and South America the first France, and the people's Frenchmen's, and spread abroad. So we're going into the origin of the word France or Franciscan, because you heard me use this word Amazon Franciscans. But when I say Amazon Franciscans, I'm talking about the ruddy or pale-skinned red people that were created through the Yaqub experiment. So the term France really is another word for French, or another word for free, because these same Amazon Franciscans also later became what you all call freed and accepted Freemasons. So the Franciscans became Freemasons because they were freed, because they used to be serfs and slaves to these Moorish nobles, as we will see in a minute when I read about the Anunnaki. All right. So let's continue. We're just going over history. So recently you had this whole Colin Kaepernick situation, which really a lot of it is a boule COINTELPRO to basically hijack the minds of our people. But you had this Colin Kaepernick situation where you have a lot of brothers in the NFL kneeling to the Star Spangled Banner and these different Union or United States Pledge of Allegiance songs, etc. So we're going to go into the history why Aboriginal Americans or Moors or so-called black people shouldn't be standing for any kind of Pledge of Allegiance or any kind of Star Spangled Banner or anything that shows any kind of loyalty to the United States or the Union States of 1863 or the Civil War era. Star Spangled Banner, the national anthem of the Union States of North America, 1863, was written by Francis Scott Key during the decisive war between the Franciscans and the falling Moors in the year 1814, which is equivalent to the year 1234 of the Moorish calendar. For many years, the Union States of 1863 had no official national anthem. Finally, it was adopted as the national hymn. So when you look into the history books, they will tell you that the Star Spangled Banner was created by this guy named Francis Scott Key. But as I've told you all in previous tapes, a lot of these are cold Masonic terms, okay? The name Francis Scott Key is another word for Franciscan Scott Key, or I got off scot-free. You ever heard that term or that phrase, I got off scot-free? That is a Masonic term going to the Franciscans who got off scot-free by stealing the Aboriginal American Moorish Empire and ending the Great Society of Islam, because that is what our ancestors had prior to us being put in prisoner of war situations by these Franciscan Europeans. All right. So that is the root of the Star Spangled Banner by this guy, Francis Scott Key, which is really just a Masonic symbol for getting scot-free of these Franciscan Amazon whites, creating a national hymn that is symbolizing the war between the falling Moors and the Franciscans in the year 1814. Okay. So we're just going over some history. All right. Let's continue. So now let's go a little bit into the Moorish woman. All right. Because her role in a lot of this is pretty key. I will admit this. So let's look into the role of the Moorish woman and where she plays in a lot of this higher science of Islam. All right. Where the dark-skinned, kinky-haired, thick-lipped Moabite Moorish woman comes from, no one knows. There is not an animal in the world that has thick lips, kinky hair, and dark skin like her. All that which can be proved is all that which can be proved is that she is the mother of male and female, the human race, who reproduce their kind. She, the Moorish woman, or the black woman, is referred to as widow. Please do not take the wrong conception, because all female and women are equally mothers and sisters, and all male sons come into being by way of them. Therefore, all sons are brothers and sons of a widow, this primordial Moorish female archetype. So I'm going into right now why so-called black people refer to each other as brother and sister. Because if you think about it, out of all the different people of ethnicities and nationalities, Moors or so-called black people are the only people who refer to themselves as brother and sister. You know, we may see somebody, what's up, brother, or even a sister, what's up, sister, right? So we're going deeper to where this comes from. This comes from the different higher sciences and the esoteric code of Allah. Okay, so let's look into who is Allah. Allah means the Moorish woman, who is the mother of modern humanity, male and female of all different shades and of all skins and colors. So in the greater mystery systems, Allah actually is the Moorish woman. And I told you all that in the tape a long time ago, that Allah is another symbol for the Moorish woman. You know what I'm saying? Or the master mason. And she uses the science of the number 9 to build Solomon's temple. What is Solomon's temple? Solomon's temple is the human body that the great spirit of the universe dwells within. And the Moorish woman is responsible for that. So the Moorish woman is the gatekeeper of anybody coming to this planet physically, okay? So let's read over this one more time. It says that she is referred to as a widow because we really don't know where she comes from, okay? We don't know where she comes from, all right? So that is just some science, you know, dealing with the Moorish woman, all right? This primordial Moorish female archetype. So just like you have Abraham being the father of humanity, this Allah or this primordial Moorish female archetype would be the mother of humanity. All right. Now, mind you, this didn't say that she's just the mother of so-called black people. It said that she is the mother of modern humanity, male and female of all shades and skins and color. All right. So that goes deep into why she was responsible also for the Yaqub experiment, dealing with the Amazonian Franciscans being manifested on this physical world. Because like I just said, she is the gatekeeper. All right. Now, in a little while, I will go over the Anunnaki, but I want to just keep going because what I read now is going to kind of spill into all that. So let's talk about the great planet Saturn. Now, you all have heard me talk about the planet Saturn a lot. If you look at a lot of my tapes, both old and new, you see me going deep into the esoteric symbolism of the planet Saturn. And I have told you all before that the planet Saturn is highly associated with Aboriginal people. And until we polarize Saturn, we really wouldn't get liberated from our situation. And until we pay the karmic debt that is owed to Saturn, we wouldn't get out of our situation. Now, if you are thinking that we have to actually worship a physical planet in the sky named Saturn, then you are lost and you need to do deeper research and reading, because somebody in the comment section is going to think some silly ass shit like that. I am talking about astrological science right now. What is astrology? Astrology is nothing but the greater science or the greater aspects of nature. Okay, so even what we call spirituality or spirit is just a greater aspect of nature. All right. So let's talk about Saturn real quick and how this plays into the Moors. The great planet Saturn is the schoolmaster of the universe, or Earth. Thus, Saturn governs the products of the Earth, economics, restrictions, sorrow, and the destiny of mankind, and the rise and fall of nations. The name of the head scientist of the Moorish nation during that era is Yaqub, whose name means in English Jacob. Here was the beginning of the 12 tribes of humanity and global amalgamation to manifest the different colors of shades of the human family, or human skin rather, and the conversion of the masses of humanity into caste systems so as to manifest as different people from each group of the caste. A group of people with the same shade of skin and hair put into a caste system so as to prevent them from conducting sexual relationship with another class slightly different. Had not white people copied this system of the Moorish nation in 1863, the Union, there would not have been any white people on the earth today. Well, since Saturn is the planet of destiny and human evolution, the caste of white people is justified of the Union 1863 post-Civil War. Let me pause right here before we continue. Okay. So first it says that the great planet Saturn is the schoolmaster of the universe. So Saturn rules over the teaching and the lessons of the universe. Then it says that Saturn rules over restrictions, economics, destiny of mankind, and the rise and fall of nations. And then it goes into saying that Yaqub is the Moorish man or the head scientist of this era that was responsible for creating the human bouquet or creating the human amalgamation program. Then it goes on to say that the caste system basically was created so people of these different shades would not sexually procreate with each other. So there was a point in time where these old Moors first created these Amazonian Franciscan Neanderthals through the Yaqub experiment. And there was a time where they banished them and they didn't procreate with these people. So Moors or Aboriginal people or so-called black people, we created what you all know of as the first caste system. This is why society is set up the way it is, because of us intentionally. And the reason why we did it is because we had to, keep a demarcation line or keep a separation between the Aboriginal people who were full-blooded human and the Neanderthal people who were the result of the Yaqub experiment. Because remember, these Neanderthals had leprosy, TB, syphilis, etc. This is where STDs got created. So your sexually transmitted diseases were first actually manifested through the Yaqub experiment. Prior to that, these diseases did not exist. Okay. Then it goes on to say that the white people adopted this caste system during 1863. So what they're not telling you is that after the so-called Civil War, which was basically a continuation of the Aboriginal Revolution of Moors from America fighting to get their land back from these European invaders, all right? They tell you all in the history book in school that Abraham Lincoln so-called freed the slaves. And after the slaves were freed, they had got their 40 acres and a mule. And basically they were given citizenship and were allowed into the greater society. That is the story they tell you. But what they're not telling you is that before they were allowed back into greater society, these white people in government positions, etc., and a lot of them were freed and accepted Masons and the KKK, they rearranged and rewrote a lot of our history. So the whole concept of us being named Africans, Indians, blacks, Negroes, etc., a lot of this was created post-Civil War during Reconstruction because they did not want you to have an easy access to learning who you were, because this is actually your land and the land was stolen. You got to remember that we are the descendants of Moors who actually knew their history, and a lot of us do not know their history. So it's the same way during Reconstruction. You got to remember, in order to keep a lie going, you got to know the truth. So these Caucasian people during the Union States of 1863, they knew that these Aboriginal Moors, were indigenous to America. And they knew that this empire and these resources belonged to these people. Now, these Moors that were living at this time, they did not know that. They thought they were Negro, and they thought they were Christian, and they thought that they may have come on here from slave boats from a continent called Africa. So at the time period of 1863, you had a lot of Aboriginals that may have not known their history, but you had a lot of Caucasians that did know their history. So they would go in and rewrite the history books. So when we would come across this stuff in the late 1800s, early 1900s, we would have a hard time finding this stuff out. Now, it's no coincidence now that a lot of the work by Noble Drew Ali and these brothers like C.M. Bay, you got to remember, they did their stuff in the early 1900s. Okay, that's when a lot of their work was being done. So slowly after the Reconstruction era, you had the reestablishing of this Moorish information, okay, here in America. But anyway, these Caucasian people decided that, they're going to create the Union States, okay, what we call the United States, which is basically when they created corporate names for our land. So this is where you start getting stuff like the state of Georgia, the state of Delaware, the state of Tennessee, the state of New York. You see what I'm saying? Prior to that, it wasn't corporate like that. You know what I'm saying? It was just indigenous land to the people, and it was basically sectioned off by whatever aboriginals were in that land and had some type of confederacy with each other. But this is where you start getting these corporate states, after the Civil War. All right. So then it says that the planet Saturn, allowed these white people to basically perpetuate and keep up the caste system because this was what was done to them. You got to remember, the planet Saturn is polarized with the planet Jupiter. The planet Saturn and Jupiter are the judge of the whole universe or the cosmos. So, whatever is done to one person, the full retribution cycle isn't completed until the one who actually instigated the pain receives the pain. So that's why we had to deal with a lot of, BS, as you'll see in a minute. But let's continue. So it says right here, let's reread. Had not white people copied the system of the Moorish nation in 1863, the Union, there would not have been any white people on Earth today. Well, since Saturn is the planet of destiny and human evolution, the caste of white people is justified of the Union 1863, in order that they might rise and rule the world and the seven seas for their first time in history. So that was what the payback was to these Caucasian people, to actually rule the world because of what some of our ancestors did to them. During this period of their rulership, they employed injustice against the Moorish descendants, which was us, in true justice, owing to the mistreatment of their forefathers by the half-breed cruel Moors or the amalgamated Arabs. So remember this. So the same Caucasian people that brought on a lot of chaos to us and issues to us through the whole, Reconstruction era and the KKK, those Caucasian people, their ancestors actually were brutalized by the amalgamated Arabs a few hundred years prior. So this is that law of retribution that they're talking about and why this was allowed to happen to us on a universal level. Because, some people, black people have often wondered this, well, why did the Most High or why did the universe or why did God allow this to happen to us? This is why the Old Testament and the Bible, you see that these generational curses will, skip a generation, and maybe the generation who actually caused the problem, they may not deal with the consequence of it. Maybe their descendants deal with it. And if you read the Bible, that's how it is set up. You know what I'm saying? So this is showing you that this is actually Moorish history. This is our history. Let's continue. This process of universal justice is referred to as retribution, meaning we dark-skinned Moorish descendants of the United States of America and abroad have fully reaped the cruel harvest of the seed sown by our forefathers under the influence of the great planet Saturn, the force of justice. And now the caste white people will have to obey the influence of Saturn against their will, from which will result in the loss of their color of shade of skin forever. And this is actually why white people fear Satan or Saturn or Shaitan. It's because they're going to have to pay the piper at some point. So Caucasian people are going to have to actually have the same thing that happened to us happen to them. And this will actually cause them to be absorbed back into the human family. So all you butthurt black women that's coming on my page crying and saying that, oh, I'm trying to promote brothers getting with Caucasian women and all this stuff, go talk to the planet Saturn about this shit. This is something universal, and this is actually the greater laws of nature doing this to clean up this Yakub process that happened a long time ago. All right. So real quick, let's read into why the ruddy pale male was created in the first place by our forefathers. And I'm going to read you a little bit into the Anunnaki story, and we're going to actually parallel this to the Yakub history, okay? And it'll make a lot of sense. So listen up. I'm just coming off of a website. It's called ancientcode.com, ancientcode.com, reading some brief basic information about the Anunnaki. So listen up. According to Zechariah Sitchin, the Anunnaki gods created humans as a slave species called the Adumah or Adumu. The first modern humans to live on Earth, the first humans were the product of intelligent design by the Anunnaki 450,000 years ago, when the ancient Anunnaki genetically mixed their DNA with that of prehistoric man and that way obtained a labor force that allowed them to exploit Earth's natural resources. Listen up. The story behind the Anunnaki, those whom Anu sent from heaven to earth, is far more mysterious than anyone is willing to accept. Now, pause. Now, if you have seen the show Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, sometimes they talk about the Anunnaki. And a lot of you all have heard the Anunnaki story from the Sumerian mythos. But it sounds very, very similar to the Yakub story, doesn't it? Listen to this part. Historically speaking, there are many similarities among ancient Sumerian texts and modern religious books such as the Bible. Could they have a similar origin? Some African cultures believe that extraterrestrial beings have been visiting the earth for tens of thousands of years. For example, the Zulu legends speak of a time when visitors from the stars came to excavate gold and other natural resources. These mines were worked by slaves created by the first people. So let's look through this one time. So the first thing it says that these Anunnaki gods created a slave species of people called Adumu. If you are familiar with the Hebrew Kabbalistic text, and you are familiar with the Hebrew writing and the Hebrew explanation or the Hebrew definition of the word Adam, it actually means red. So that's your first thing. Your second thing is CMB is referring to these Amazonian Franciscans as what? Red, pale-skinned people, right? The next thing it says that the Anunnaki genetically mixed their DNA with that of prehistoric man, and this created a whole new race of people. The next thing it says is that a labor force was obtained that allowed them to exploit Earth's natural resources. And it says that these mines were worked by slaves created by the first people. And then it goes to say that there were visitors from the stars who came to excavate gold and other natural resources. What I'm here to tell you people is this. Who they're calling the Anunnaki are these Moorish high priest scientists from Central and South America, okay? That is who they're talking about. That is the Anunnaki. So it's not any aliens coming from any sky, you know what I'm saying, or anything like that. That's what we're dealing with, okay? The Anunnaki are these Aboriginal Moors or these Yakub scientists. These Adumu or these red people that the Anunnaki created to work in these cave mines are what you all know of as the Goy or the Goyim or the Gentile class. And these are these Neanderthal, Amazon, Franciscan white people that I'm talking about. So the ancestors of the white people you see today were these Neanderthal humanoid hybrids that were working and mining in caves, while these Anunnaki, aka Moorish Aboriginal men and women, gained the resources. So that is where your first slavery came from. The Yakub experiment was actually to make life easier for the Aboriginal people who were on the planet originally. And this is part of the karmic debt that we had to pay, okay? Now there's a brother that's in my comment section who is responsible for leaving us this great work by CM Bay, so we want to salute and shout him out. And I also want to say this too, that this brother is very, very intellectual, and he's very, very good with putting his words together. And a lot of the things that I say, he will come in the comment section and he will back up and give you the reference to what I'm saying. So that is another future warning that I got Moors that are snipers in my comment section that will come and get you for talking crazy. And this brother is one of them. All right. Now I want to shout him out, and I want to read a comment because he kind of gave a clue also to this Anunnaki and these Moors created these people to work in the gold mines for us. Let's go into what he says. He says, the Moorish man archetype symbolized by head scientist Yakub created the ruddy pale tribe for slavery purposes, mining gold, menial task, scientific experimentation, etc. They were created by us for our good pleasure, for our purposes. It was an intellectual exercise. However, the Moorish female was not as detached from the experiment. She literally mothered this entire race of people. The Quran of Mecca speaks of the mystic ties between parent and child. And so it is going to definitely subconsciously offend the Moorish woman to think of her prized children being exterminated. Also, there might be a bit of sour milk from the Yakub scientists coercing the Moorish woman to create these humanoid things only to mistreat them. This paradigm is very complex, y'all. But we need to be dealing with this science in the Aquarian age because the future cannot be born if the past is still a mystery. So this brother basically just cracked it right on open. He's telling you right here that in the Quran of the Mecca, they speak of the mystic ties between a parent and a child, which is all occult symbolism for these Moorish women who were too emotionally attached to these Yaqub experiment, humanoid, Neanderthal, troglodyte niggers that we created. Okay? For lack of a better word. I also want to read something else that the brother put, because someone left a silly comment and he actually replied to them. And it was very, very good. Okay. Let's see real quick if we want to read that. It was something else he put. Basically, the brother just went into, I guess basically all I wanted to say was how he just broke it up. He said that the Moorish man archetypal scientists symbolized by the Yaqub created the ruddy pale skinned tribes for slavery purposes, mining gold, menial tasks, and scientific experiments. So ultimately that's what we created them for, y'all. It's not a mystery. Like this is what it was for. You know what I'm saying? Was it right? No, but that's what went down. That's what went down. So to wrap this up, Moorish men, karmic correction, spiritual elevation, and cleaning your karmic debt for a new life incarnation post World War III. The brother wanted me to kind of respond and, hit on this point. The whole thing is we have to get right with the planet Saturn and these astrological energies of karmic retribution. There is a website called GrupoVenus.com. It's called GrupoVenus.com. And this website, you can look into your astrological chart and see where Saturn is placed. And you also can look to see what karmic debt you have to pay in this lifetime. I'm going to read you all what mine is. In your prior life, you misuse your psychic gifts to dominate others. Most likely, you practice witchcraft or use hypnotism to control and instill fear. Karmic lesson. Channel your passionate energies into creative projects. Pluto in the 12th house of Scorpio, Saturn in the 2nd house of Capricorn. Those are my placements. So one of my karmic debts was in my past life, I was using a lot of my psychic gifts to dominate people. And I was practicing some form of hypnotism and so-called witchcraft. So maybe my soul in a past life was actually responsible in this Yaqub experiment, because part of me is very, very brutal and very, very aggressive. Oh, okay. And I can easily have seen myself being some type of executioner or being like General Monk, basically bring a lot of pain to these people, using a lot of my, occult magic to basically probably raise a lot of hell. And that may be part of my karmic debt of why I'm on these YouTube tapes giving this information out for free and trying to raise up, you Moors of today, because maybe in the past life, these same skills that I'm using to give you all, maybe I use them to hurt some of you all. Maybe I included myself in the Yaqub experiment. Maybe I had a group of, barbarian Neanderthals digging in a cave mine for me. Maybe I had me a harem of Caucasian women, and I was using hypnosis and I was on some get out shit. You know what I'm saying? I probably was, because once again, I know my personality. You all don't. I know how sinister I really, really am deep within my subconscious. So that probably is part of my karmic debt. I wouldn't deny it. But either way it go, we have to clean the karmic debt.